Hello. How y'all doing?
I have a dream.
You do?
Well, we want to participate.
Ask what you can do for your country.
You better work.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hi, my name is Christie, and welcome to Bonus Features.
Welcome.
Nailed it that time.
Thank you for listening to episode 1, guys. We really appreciate it, and we're excited to be back.
I've been fighting a mysterious illness for the past week, so if I sound like I'm dying, that's why. Week 1 of the podcast went really well. You guys have been awesome. So much support, more than Alex and I were expecting. The format of Bonus Features is going to be, for the lack of a better term, a true crime comedy podcast. We are going to be cracking jokes here. We're going to be making jokes to get through some of the really dark and disturbing stuff. And if you don't like that, if that's not your thing, that's totally fine. It's just maybe not for you.
So today we have a very exciting topic, but one that is often overlooked. When I was doing this, I realized, okay, I got to hook in the true crime fans who want the serial killer in the closet, because this is actually more scary than that. But it happens on a larger, more nebulous, existential level. When I was halfway through doing this research, I was terrified. I forgot about my own mind. I don't know. This has shook me to the core. And honestly, I am kind of scared. So I hope you guys enjoy this. We will be exploring the CIA, their confounding origins, history of shocking failures, and the reality of our current intelligence problem. I had originally wanted to focus on Charles Manson and his involvement in the CIA, but as I began to do a brief history of the CIA, and I was so horrified by what I found that I decided to just focus on the CIA. Now, what do you know about intelligence, Christy?
Nothing.
Nothing. Do you know what that word means?
It's when your brain does the thing.
It's spying, intelligence agencies.
Personally, I think spies are silly and boring.
Well, that's what they want you to think. They want you to either think that it's boring and bureaucratic or romantic fantasy James Bond world.
Yeah, I don't like James Bond.
Okay, so you're both. You think James Bond is boring.
Yes.
This shapes our lives, and it could potentially end all of our lives. Intelligence is secret action taken to understand or change what happens abroad. It is, as President Eisenhower once stated, a distasteful yet vital necessity. Nowadays, when you hear an interview with a member of the CIA, they're often asked what the biggest threat to American democracy is. And they often respond with one word: China.
China.
So let's begin our journey in China 2,000 years ago. Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu had a profound understanding of the universe. But the people of his time failed to grasp his wisdom. And predicting their decline, he departed. He left behind a short instructional book before disappearing. The following quote is from chapter 58 of the Tao Te Ching. When a thirst for power is in charge, the higher the goals, the lower the results. 1942. Our Boston Terrier is settling in for a dark, disturbing...
If you're watching on YouTube, you might be able to see. He just, he got his blanket ready and he did the whole donut swirl. He's ready. He's ready.
It is 1942, and the seed that would eventually grow into the CIA is planted in the fertile ash of World War II. Speaking of ash, I should mention that our primary source for today's episode is Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner, a Pulitzer Prize winning book on the history of the CIA. It's a great book. I recommend you check it out. We will also be using a couple other sources, including Chaos, which we have down there. And let's continue. The OSS, the Office of Strategic Services. Formed to coordinate activities behind enemy lines, it is a boys' club of romantic ideas and reckless action. At one point...
Aren't all boys' clubs that?
Yes, I'm going to say a lot of things this episode where you could probably add that to it. He was a huge alcoholic. Weren't they all huge? There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But yes. But this is a supreme boys club. At one point,
No women?
I don't think there were women. I looked at a lot of pictures. No women.
No women.
It's basically like Inglorious Basterds, which you haven't seen, but you, the listener, if you've seen Inglorious Basterds, these are the kind of people we're talking about.
I already know they're going to be coming for me that I haven't seen Inglorious Basterds.
We'll watch it. Don't worry, guys. At one point, the OSS will make a serious proposal to weaken wartime Japan. The plan? To strap bats with explosives and drop them all over Tokyo, where they would inevitably roost and then explode.
Wait, so they were getting bats.
Mm-hmm. This was a serious plan. It was between this and exploding wasabi.
What?
That's a joke. But you see, it's on par. Yeah. Instead of dropping bombs from the jets, just unleash a ton of bats. And that's the kind of... Nobody would even believe you if you did that.
But the bombs would have to be very small. And at that point in time...
Yeah, but there's tons of them. And they would light... This is all made of wood, right? Tokyo at this point.
No, I know, but were they even making bombs that small back then? That would be... Like, bats are not big.
Listen, it was a plan, exploding bats, okay? They didn't end up doing it.
Well, clearly.
Of all the officers, I don't think it is clearly. There's a lot of missions that were done. They made spinning wheels that would spin all the way to Germany. Rolling bombs.
Like in Mario?
Yes. Yes, exactly like Mario. They did that. They did a lot. Okay.
All right.
I didn't know that you would be doubting this so much. I would have backed this up.
It just seems very strange for 1940s. They've got these weird cartoonish.
Well, you don't know when you've gone too far until you go too far. Okay. And at this point, also, Japan, in the later days of World War II, Japan was planning on biological warfare, dropping some sort of horrific illness into California. We were all pushing it.
Yeah.
We were all pushing it. I mean, think about if the nuclear program didn't work. We would be having a conversation here where I'd be saying they were trying to make an atom explode into a giant explosion that would create a mushroom cloud that would possibly light the whole atmosphere on fire. That's also crazy, but that worked. Anyway, the bats didn't happen. But it was a bold idea. Also, of all the officers that the OSS dropped into Germany, under 10% survived. So these men did accomplish some heroic things. They rescued some people. They blew up some bridges. But for the most part, they died. Which means that the people that lived, the OSS survivors, had incredible stories and were quite respected. When you think of like, Grandpa is an alcoholic and he's got some really cool stories, this is like OSS. Upon the completion of World War II, President Truman deemed the OSS unfit for post-war life, which was an odd decision coming from a man who had just dropped 2 atomic bombs. And it began a bizarre period in America where the country essentially had a complete monopoly on nuclear weapons and zero intelligence. So we've got the bombs. No other country can retaliate with nukes. And we also don't know what's going on or what we should be doing. It was the good old days where you could kick back, smoke a cigar in peace with the knowledge that if our enemies stepped out of line, we could vaporize them without retaliation. And it lasted about 2 weeks. As the Soviets became a nuclear power of their own. Yes?
So did other countries have intelligence operations?
Well, intelligence, meaning trying to figure out what the other side is doing, has been around forever.
Right.
You know, I mean, you send out a runner hundreds of years ago. They see smoke in the distance. They go, oh, we think the enemy has a camp there. We run back. We let them know that.
Right,
you know?
but you said that we didn't have any, or America didn't have any intelligence,
We did
but
not
they
have
had nuclear weapons.
We did not have an official intelligence.
There was no like CIA.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, they ended the OSS. So they had other programs, but they did not have an official intelligence program,
okay.
which is very important.
What's the Canadian intelligence?
CSIS.
I knew that.
Your grandfather was part of CSIS.
Actually.
But that's how good they are. Even their own family members are like, what is it again?
Well, my grandfather, he, on his deathbed, and every time he went in for surgery, he had to have an officer there with him because they were afraid of things he might say while under medication and stuff. So he knew shit.
He also, when asked about aliens and UFOs, would tremble look down, and take a long sip of his drink. So
I want to know what he knew.
I do too. As the Soviets became a nuclear power of their own, the need for actual American intelligence grew. U.S. decision makers disputed what to focus on, knowledge or action. And they decided to focus on knowledge and restrain themselves from action. And on that, we end our history of the CIA. America flourished under a wise council, ushering in 80 years of peace. No. What actually happened was, amidst the growing paranoia, President Truman called together a secret meeting to form a clandestine agency. The best of the best were assembled, including the head of the first self-serve grocery chain in America.
Walmart?
It was... I wish I had done enough research to know the name. I don't think it was Walmart, but it was interesting, right? I mean, until then, you would go to different stores, and the guy would be behind the thing, and you'd go, "I want that bread." Pointed it, they give it to you.
Like in Red Dead Redemption, when
exactly.
you go to the little corner store.
Yeah, like,
is that really how it was? You couldn't go and pick out your own shit that you wanted?
This was a huge deal when it was all just there. It's like, what, you mean I can just put this in my cart?
Wow.
And they're like, yeah, go ahead. So I think this was supposed to be kind of it's the grocery guy. I mean, how ridiculous. But when you think about what is actually required to run a good intelligence agency, the same skills required to upgrade businesses and make advances as an entrepreneur probably would translate pretty well. He had also made his fortune previous to the grocery chain somewhat fittingly in life insurance. And if it was possible to take out a claim on the country itself, this would have been a good time.
I was thinking about life insurance the other day.
Okay.
Isn't it suspicious to take out life insurance on anyone? Even your partner? Like I don't know anybody who actually has life insurance.
You want to take out life insurance on yourself. That's the way to go. It's not like I'm going on a trip to the Grand Canyon with my wife. They've got some lovely high cliff views. And by the way, I want the most expensive life insurance claim. Obviously, that's sus. And usually not possible.
But why would you take out life insurance on yourself? What's the benefit of that?
So did you just not know what insurance is?
No, I don't know anything about life insurance.
Okay, well...
I mean, you're dead, so what are you insured for?
The idea is that if you die, they pay out. So your family is left with money. It's peace of mind. If something happens to me, my family will be taken care of. Then a bunch of people pay for it, and it only happens to some people, and those some people get the pot. Well, their family gets the pot because they're dead.
But that's still incentive for people in your family to kill you.
Well, that would be fraudulent and criminal. So the idea is that we don't...
Anytime I hear someone go, I got life insurance, I'm like, you're a serial killer.
If I bought life insurance to protect our family, would you kill me?
No.
Well, there you go. Most people, hopefully, are although you wouldn't tell me if you were going to.
It's because the only time I ever hear about it, it's in some true crime story.
Your brain has been pickled by true crime. Okay, tell me where we are in the story.
We're talking about the guy who owns the grocery store, and he also works in life insurance.
Yes, but what is happening? President Truman, the man, remember in Oppenheimer? He's the guy that goes, "Get out of my office."
Yeah.
To Oppenheimer. That's President Truman.
Okay.
And he is calling together a secret ceremony. And this is going to sound like a joke, what I'm about to say, but this is fact. This happened. The men, the grocery men, the insurance men, were told to wear black cloaks, black hats, and were given wooden daggers in a bizarre knighting ceremony. And so began the short-lived Central Intelligence Group. Imagine you're called to the Pentagon or wherever this took place. They go, dress up, here's a wooden dagger, kneel, and they were told that they were part of the secret snooping agency.
Nerds.
Snooping what? It is pretty nerdy.
A bunch of fucking nerds.
And you're going to learn that a lot of this is nerdy. But these are violent, potentially earth-destroying nerds. Okay?
Have you seen nerds play Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah. There's a lot of overlap here, I'm sure. So began the short-lived Central Intelligence Group, the first official post-war spy agency. After being sworn in, one of the new members was asked how he felt and responded, "I feel like going home," which is how we're all going to feel by the end of this. I don't want to fear nuclear war. I don't want to hear about how the CIA supported Charles Manson. I just want to go home. But we can't. We can't yet. We have spying to do. It is April 1946. A limo flying the U.S. flag drives into the Kremlin, and a U.S. diplomat steps out and walks down the cold hallways of Soviet power with one objective: to find out what Russia wants. You gotta know what Russia wants to do, right? That's the big question. What are they going to do post-war? So what do we need to do?
This is pre-Putin.
This is pre-Putin.
I feel like Putin's been alive for fucking ever.
This is-
I feel like he's been the ruler of Russia for like 300 years.
Do you know what the leader would have been at that time?
No, Putin.
Joseph Stalin.
Oh, yeah.
Joseph Stalin.
I did know that. I did know that.
Yeah, I'm sure you could have figured that out. Okay, so the plan was to ask Stalin. You heard that right. It was Operation Enter Joseph Stalin's office and ask him. And it's, I guess they just thought it was so crazy it just might work. And it doesn't work. Stalin's responses to questions about the Iron Curtain and plans for expansion were cryptic and unhelpful, leaving the U.S. with only more apprehension. If you ever don't know what something is, feel free to ask, and I will be happy to explain if I know what it is. Do you know what the Iron Curtain is?
No.
The Iron Curtain is what they call...
Is that what did you just want to describe what the Iron Curtain was?
No, I respectfully saw a look of complete confusion on your face when I said that.
Honestly, my brain is a little pickled today. I've been on a lot of cold medication.
Yeah. And that's good. Get the medication. Get into that psychedelic headspace. It's going to help with this. There's a lot of drugs. The Iron Curtain is what they referred to as the wall between the East and the West, where we couldn't get any information out of. What are the Soviets doing? What do they have? How is their nuclear program?
A metaphorical curtain.
A metaphorical curtain, absolutely. In the face of this looming threat behind the curtain, what did U.S. intelligence officers do? Did they look inwards to see themselves in their enemy?
Yes.
No, they drank a lot of alcohol in weekly meetings that were called Sunday suppers.
Who's drinking? Everyone.
The spies.
American spies.
Yeah, because remember they created the Central Intelligence Group with the wooden daggers?
Yep.
So this is what all they've been doing. They've just been drinking.
They're just role-playing and drinking alcohol?
It's like Dungeons and Dragons, yeah.
It is like Dungeons and Dragons.
They asked Stalin, hey, can you tell us what you plan on doing? He said no. So they went,
he said, I'm not talking to a bunch of nerds.
So they went home and they started drinking in Sunday suppers that included a dinner with their wives and a late-night hangout without their wives, where everyone agreed that being a powerful secret spy was really awesome. And these meetings led the spies to a major realization. It was time to send money to Greece.
What?
Yep. This has been mostly forgotten by history, but in the early days of the communist panic, Truman and his men decided that the best way to slow the spread of communism was to send money, spies, and napalm to Greece.
Communism is growing? Let's send weaponized lava to Greece.
Sometimes the simplest answer is the best one. A silver lining to this was the accidental discovery of Saganaki cheese.
I love Saganaki.
Yes. Invented by accidentally spilling napalm on cheese.
No way.
Yep. And I'm really glad that was included in Legacy of Ashes. It's attention to detail like that.
If you guys haven't tried Saganaki cheese.
That wins authors the Pulitzer Prize.
So awesome. You go to the restaurant, you sit down, a 17-year-old waitress walks over and just lights cheese on fire.
It's dangerous.
In front of
you. Yeah.
And you can feel the flames singe your eyebrows.
Yeah, and that danger comes out in the flavor of the cheese. It's great.
Amazing.
So I thought you'd like that fact. It's not true, but I threw it in there.
It's not true?
No. It spilled napalm on cheese?
What the fuck? Why did you say that?
Do you know what napalm is?
Yeah.
You think somebody was having a cheese sandwich?
Like while they were in this meeting, because you mentioned they were drinking, that they spilt liquor on the cheese and lit it on fire.
Napalm. Okay. I see what you mean. Yeah, it could have been an exaggeration of the truth. But as far as I know, that had nothing to do with intelligence.
Nothing to do with cheese?
No, I just wanted to add that. I'm not going to do that a lot, but occasionally I'm going to throw in a little fun. Hoyt Vandenberg, the second director of the Central Intelligence Group, we're moving here. We're going to have to get a lot of information in. So, new director urged that the nation now faced foreign threats as never before. He insisted that the oceans had shrunk, and now Europe and Asia border the United States like Canada and Mexico. President Truman continued to beat his chest in bombastic speeches,
Mr. Bombastic.
leading to more and more, that's what that song's about, leading to more and more money being sent overseas. Behind the scenes, a growing realization was setting in. The USA did not have an effective plan. The USA did not have an effective spy network. The USA did not have an effective intelligence agency.
Womp womp.
The possibility of having you're giving a womp womp. I want to add some context here, because people love dumping on intelligence. It's fun to call people in the CIA losers because we have...
Who's calling them losers?
A lot of people call people in the CIA losers. Tim Weiner calls them losers. This book is very controversial. It's very popular. New York Times reporter, big book, Legacy of Ashes, very negative. Very negative towards the CIA. So I've actually added some things to provide more of a nuanced look later. But I think it's important to remember that this is a very hard job. It's easy to go, fail, sucks to be you. But it's like, you know, when you watch the Olympics and you watch somebody like get a 0.7 out of 10 in diving, and you're like, that was a lame quadruple backflip while you're eating chips. It's like that. This is hard, okay? You put us in these positions and we're probably going to fuck up too. So, I'm not trying to be a CIA simp, but I just don't want to be too one-sided. The possibility of having a successful agency, claimed their director, was 5 years over the horizon. Despite this, summer came to an end, and US spies decided to secretly form the CIA. They just did it.
The same guys who were role-playing before?
Yeah, they were, well, they're not role-playing. Well, they were role-playing.
They are.
For a night when they had the fun cloak ceremony. But they are, they are intelligence officers, and they decided to form the CIA. But this was behind the scenes. Little success. I think you could almost say no success. And they decided to upgrade their whole organization into the CIA. More official. It's kind of a fake it till you make it.
What was it called before?
Central Intelligence Group. That's gone. We're the CIA now.
So they just changed group to agency.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were having a Sunday supper and they went, group sounds lame. We want to be an agency. And yeah, fake it till you make it. The CIA's first director, Alan Dulles, laid out the expectations for an effective agency. All it will take, he said, is hard work, discriminating judgment, and common sense. That's it. What could go wrong?
Easy.
Right? Yeah. Anytime you hear the head of a 3-letter agency saying something like that, it's a good idea to pour yourself a good hard drink. In July 1947, President Truman unveiled the National Security Act. It described the new shape of the Air Force, the Pentagon, and in 6 short, shady paragraphs, a new intelligence agency. The CIA was officially recognized for the first time. Now, if you're at home right now thinking, this is a lot of paperwork and naming and dinners, this is boring, I promise you, you're going to be begging for dinners pretty soon. And you're going to wish that we could go back to the salad days of the National Security Act. In the beginning, the CIA basically had no money. Their job was outlined as to correlate, evaluate, disseminate intelligence, and to perform other duties
Disseminate.
and functions. Duties. Related to intelligence affecting the national security. And it is in these 11 words that the dark power of the CIA truly started to shine, particularly in other duties. Truman was rarely at the table for any of this, and this started a trend of presidents having little oversight or instruction for the CIA. And there's a good chance that this has continued indefinitely with, Donald Trump, for instance, maybe not having a great line of sight on the CIA or useful recommendations or any other president, from what I hear.
Why did you use Donald Trump as an example?
That's why I added the last part.
Oh my God, what a liberal shill.
Right.
Libtard.
Because I said Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Well, look,
You can't say anyone without anybody getting mad.
Okay, you're right. Honestly, I should have just said all presidents.
Yeah.
Left to their own devices, the men of the CIA talked a lot. They just talked. What are we going to do? What are we going to focus on? And they decided that the number one goal was to do guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare.
Like
I know what you're going to say.
The Viet Cong does guerrilla warfare.
I thought you were going to make a guerrilla joke. But no.
No, I'm actually very educated on guerrilla warfare.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Well, I only know because I went to Vietnam and I learned about the Vietnamese War. But it's when they like sneak.
Yeah, it has a lot of sneaking.
Sneaking and attacking.
Yep, going behind enemy lines.
Yeah. So like in the Vietnam War, they would like dig tunnels underneath and then they would like pop up. And
yeah, it's what you do when you're drunk and you go, let's do it. I'm tired of waiting.
Yeah.
Let's fucking go do this. I double dare you to do this. Go to Eastern.
Why is it called guerrilla warfare? Is it because gorillas charge?
No, but it's not spelled gorilla. See, you did end up making it gorilla somehow. It's Guerilla.
Guerrilla.
Yes. There's a fine line between you being the adorable audience surrogate blonde and being actually brain dead. So let's try to stay on the side of charming.
I told you I have taken a lot of medication.
That was a joke too, guys. Don't call me a misogynist. Luckily, they did eventually get their first real order. And that was to fix the 1948 Italian election. Because we can't surround the Pope.
Fix?
Yeah. Decide.
Yeah. Before it was it happened.
Yeah. Be puppet master. And
like what the whole...
Like what people say the Democrats did.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did that.
Okay.
We did that for real.
So that's probably why people are not like blown away by thinking
no, we did
that it was rigged.
The reason they wanted to do it is because a lot of Catholics there, and Italy was seen as a very important region for like the global pulse. And yeah, they just didn't want to surround the Pope with communists. They wanted the side to win that was more in line with Western values. And guess how much it took back then to make that happen?
Money?
Yeah.
$1 million.
$10 million. But where would the money come from? That's a bit of an issue, right? Because the CIA isn't really getting any money right now. So the head of the CIA at that time, Allen Dulles, talked to all his friends. He was a very well-connected man, and he knew people in the government, business, etc. But it wasn't enough. And what we ended up using was the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which was created during the Depression to help safeguard the economy. It was also introduced as a way to decide what to do with captured loot from the war. So if we found a bunch of German treasure, we're keeping it. Who gets that? And somehow they cooked the books and crunched the numbers in order to get $10 million from that. And literally, CIA agents would just fill suitcases with cash and pass them to Catholic priests in a upscale Italian hotel. And we won. We did it. That's all it took. If you pass enough suitcases of cash, you win. And to go back to your point, both sides do this constantly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of fixing an election, that is what elections are in America, is lobbyists with proverbial suitcases of cash. The suitcase cash method was repeated for the next 25 years. We did this again and again in lots of countries. And if the CIA is listening, we are anti-communism and we need support. Patreon.com. At this point, communists seize Czechoslovakia. Now, I don't want you to think that I wrote Czechoslovakia and spelled it correctly, okay? Just know that I wrote Czech. And I just said...
That could have meant many things.
When
like
if you just
Czech
see
Republic.
that, I'm just saying Czechoslovakia. I tried to even get it close enough that it would spell check to that, and I couldn't. So that started a brutal period of 5 years where there was just, violence and chaos. So during this period of unrest, the CIA's Prague station chief worked hard to move assets over the border to safety.
Prague? So it is the Czech Republic.
Yeah.
You said Slovakia.
No. Prague is next door to
Czechoslovakia.
This is next door.
Why is it so hard to say it?
I don't know. There's Czechoslovakia, Prague is in a country next to
Yeah, the Czech
Czechoslovakia.
Republic.
Yes, and that's where the station chief was.
Okay.
We still have control of this area. We're
Got
still
it.
on good terms in that area. But the communists have seized Czechoslovakia. Now, this is an important term to note. A station chief is someone in an area who is in charge of the spies in that area and reports back to the higher-ups in the Pentagon. Assets are important people that are on our side that are now in danger. We're trying to get them out.
Yeah.
And, win CIA, we were able to get a lot of those assets out. One of them was the Czech head of intelligence, the Czechoslovakia head of intelligence. And you know how they got him out? They stuffed him between the radiator and grill of a roadster and drove him across the border.
Wow.
He was
Comfortable.
inside a car. Yeah. On March 5th, a terrifying cable hit the Pentagon. Russia could attack. News from the East. Russia could attack. Now, a lot of people said, you don't have to worry about this. It's being overblown. This is not rational. We don't have to freak out about this. But nobody listened to those people. And Truman won the Marshall Plan, which basically put American barricades in Asia and Europe. So, rising fear, more action. The Office of Policy Coordination was developed. A very boring... A good rule of thumb here is the more boring the agency sounds, the more dastardly the things they do. It was developed to fight the Russians. And this is when you're starting to see the beginning of compartmentalizing happening, where there's the CIA and then there's another thing in the CIA, then there's another thing. When people talk about UFOs, they're always like, this is why it might be real, because people don't know what's happening in the office right next to them. But this is the compartment starting. And during this time of additions, assassination was first brought up as a legitimate CIA tool. Efforts were made to change the German currency. That's one plan that happened at this time. If we can just change the currency, I'm not 100% sure how that was going to... I guess if you control the money, you control the country to a certain degree. So Russia quickly put a stop to that. You understand that during this time, there's Eastern and Western Germany, yes? Mm-hmm. And that's where the battleground is happening. Nobody really knew what Russia wanted. Nobody knew what Russia was doing. But they continued to work hard to try to make any semblance of a working agency happen. One informant was bribed with salted peanuts, his favorite snack. We also started seducing people. Mistresses, honeypotting, sex.
Honeypotting.
To get information. That's what you would be doing if you were in the CIA during this time. That's not me being sexist.
So
That's
there were women in the CIA.
They would have absolutely used you to honeypot a Russian guy. Yeah.
Wow. Men.
It's one of the most effective.
So silly. So stupid.
Mm-hmm. We are. But keep in mind, a lot of women fell for this too. You got a hot guy seducing a plain woman, and she'll tell him anything.
A plain woman.
Yeah. A popular move was you've got a diplomat, aka Russian spy. His wife is tired of his fat, slovenly ways, and they send in the handsome guy out of Washington, and he speaks Russian, and he just treats her nice for 2 weeks, and then she tells him everything that her drunk diplomat husband said. And then she gets executed in the night.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. Now, here we're going to introduce a very important man named Frank Weisner. Frank Weisner started to make waves in the CIA around this time by suggesting it was time to fuck shit up. Audacious strategies, like straight up invading Eastern Germany with tanks and artillery. Nobody knows what's going on. Everyone's kind of afraid. And he says, enough is enough. Let's fucking go. Weisner was someone who could be labeled as having toxic masculinity. And he would be nowadays. He also represents every 16-year-old boy's idea of the perfect man. A survivor of one of the most bold, dangerous spy organizations ever. Remember the OSS, Inglorious Basterds style from World War II? He was one of the survivors of that. He used to be quite handsome in his youth, but he was a heavy drinker and the years of drinking had made his face swell.
Drinking will do that to you.
Yeah, he was puffy, and bald. He was balding, which I think actually makes my unbiased opinion on that made him cooler. But yeah, anytime I'm going to say somebody was a heavy drinker, just keep in mind that
like that guy from Dune.
Yeah, he's like the Baron.
Yeah.
He wasn't that bad. You can see him on Wikipedia. He just had a bit of swelling and a receding hairline. Anytime I say that somebody was a heavy drinker, keep in mind that pretty much everyone back there was a heavy drinker, so that means like alcoholic. Frank Weisner's idea for a tank invasion was shot down, but his fighting spirit was embraced. And the men believed there needed to be one decision maker. We can't have all these people talking, deciding what to do. We're not making any progress. Let's give one person more power. So he officially took over in September 1948 as the director of plans. He was parked in a little office near the Lincoln Memorial, and he went to work. He had no patience. Dulles had no patience. And they really just wanted to pay off politicians and kill people. They did come up with a pretty good idea here. Well, I don't know if you could call it a good idea, but it was a valid idea. They realized that if they were going to drop nukes on Russia and blow up Russian cities and start a nuclear holocaust, they had to get those bombers out. I guess maybe it wouldn't have been a holocaust because not everyone had nukes back then. But they realized that if they were going to drop nukes on Russia, the people in those planes would not have enough gas to get the planes over Russian cities and then come back. And they would have to parachute out of the planes and then get picked up. So they developed this evacuation line where they could parachute down and hopefully be safe. Around this time, there was a lot of infighting as well. The CIA and the DOP were at war, those different groups. And the Sunday night suppers continued. They still continued to drink and talk and play Dungeons and Dragons into the wee hours. Unfortunately, they also had no effective spies, no effective information, no effective agency. And some of the CIA started to go insane around this point. People would just lose their minds and end up in psych wards. Paranoia, drinking, lack of results, a inflated sense of purpose, just a general soup that caused their brains to not work. In 1949, Weisner lacked power and had no legally obtained funds. The CIA Act rammed through Congress gave them tons of power. This is going to be a theme. People not accomplishing much and getting promoted, getting more power, more money. I think it's just because they were having those Sunday suppers, honestly. When you drink with somebody on Sunday, you feel awkward the next day and you're like, ooh, we had some weird conversations. I touched his wife's butt in the kitchen. We have to...
Like all those scenes in Oppenheimer when he's going for dinners and drinking and...
They...
Flirting with that girl from Midsummer.
Florence Pugh.
Yes.
Florence Pugh.
Florence Pugh.
Florence Pugh. That is basically how it works. I mean, we all do this. The gifts, the favors. It's all a way of covering up the awkward drinking. And this is just that on a much larger scale. More power, more money. They just told the CIA that they couldn't do any crazy shit in the USA. As long as they did it overseas.
Crazy shit is in what? Like...
Don't get caught doing stuff in the USA. Don't interrogate people. Don't manipulate elections.
I thought you were talking about like their behaviors. Like don't sleep with hookers in the USA.
Well, no, I think they were allowed to do that around this time. But don't operate in the USA. But anything overseas was fine as long as you didn't get caught. As Nixon would later remark, if it's secret, it's legal. Now, in 1949, the spy network...
Can you still use that?
If it's secret, it's legal?
Yeah.
If you're the CIA, I think you're going to find the answer is yes. The spy network started breaking down in 1949. And one of the higher-ups, named Forrestal, resigned as a Secretary of Defense and was sent to a psych ward. Remember people going crazy?
Yeah.
He's in a psych ward. He couldn't sleep. And for weeks and weeks, he just went crazier and crazier. And this was going to sound a little silly, but this is something that men would do around that time. They would just write poetry. This is This is the equivalent of.
That's the worst kind of guy.
But that's just being a SoundCloud. That's just being a SoundCloud rapper now. He was transcribing a Greek poem, the chorus from Ajax, and that was normal. This is the kind of stuff they didn't have TikTok.
I dated a poet.
Yeah, but you're not getting
briefly.
it. This
I know.
Modern day
I'm
poets,
understanding. I'm just saying
they're different. I want you to put
it was the most insufferable experience of my life.
Nobody is doubting that, but I want you to put some respect on this guy's name. He's an old
SoundCloud rapper.
Dangerous. Yeah. Just give him an upgrade to SoundCloud rapper. This is like
Not much of an upgrade.
It was all a dream. I used to have Word Up magazine. But he's writing the chorus from Ajax. And he stopped at the word nightingale. We know this because, the paper was there. He wrote the word night, and then he committed suicide. He jumped out the window to his death. Yeah.
What?
Yes. A lot of these guys kill themselves.
That's what you think.
That is a fair point to make. Yeah. Man, that's true. Yeah, did they commit suicide?
I literally watched a documentary yesterday about a guy who faked his own suicide.
Oh, you think they faked it? See, I thought you meant murdered by the government.
No, I was talking faking their own suicides. But unless their bodies were found, then maybe they were murdered.
I believe their bodies were found. I think it would have said disappeared.
That documentary I'm talking about, by the way, is called The Invisible Pilot, and it's about a man who jumps off a bridge, but doesn't actually.
Well, he wrote the word night, and then he jumped. Now, nightingale was the code word.
I'm sorry. He didn't commit suicide.
Why are you doubting this so much?
Nobody is in mid-sentence writing something and then goes, it's over now.
What is your issue with this? Is it that it's too cinematic? Or is it's just you think that when you're writing, you don't commit suicide? People write suicide notes.
No, I know, but why would he stop mid-sentence and why? It doesn't make sense.
He was writing the word nightingale, which was a word in the poem.
Yeah.
And nightingale happened to be the code word for a very serious operation that they had been planning, which is one of the reasons why he had gone insane. And I'm going to explain why. Nightingale was dropping Ukrainian resistant forces who were against Stalin behind the Iron Curtain.
Yippee! Dropping pierogies over the ground.
It's actually a lot worse than that because these Ukrainian resistant forces were Nazi sympathizers. They had been working with the Nazis, and we were now using them as a enemy of our enemy as our friend type situation, which was haunting Forrestal, and that's why he wrote night and then jumped out the window.
Okay. No pierogies.
The Soviets killed all those people. We dropped them in, and they were murdered. So we sent more. They were also murdered. After 5 years of failure, using Ukrainian agents was deemed a complete failure.
No kidding.
Weiner and the British went into Albania and decided that it was a barren, ripe area to try this approach again. The whole airdrop. They were really into this at this time. It's like you ever get one thing and you just focus on that one thing. And even if it doesn't work, you just keep doing it.
Yes.
Like when I was doing the debate streams on TikTok, yes. I'm just like, this is going to work. Airdropping them in to Albania this time, and they were all killed. I mean, I'm just imagining it in a cartoonish way where literally they drop them in and they don't even hit the ground yet. They're just shot before they even hit. But that is almost what was happening. Most of them, if not all, were killed. You know why?
Why?
The Soviets had known every aspect of those plans from the start. They knew exactly where the spies would be dropped because
they had spies.
They had effective spies. Well, one effective, notorious spy named Kim Philby. If you've seen Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, the author John le Carré, he was inspired by Kim Philby. John le Carré worked in MI6 and hated Kim Philby with a passion, and he kind of based the mole in that book on Kim Philby. Now, basically, how this worked was Philby worked alongside a CIA agent named Angleton, and Angleton was friends with Kim Philby, and they liked to drink gin and whiskey. And I don't I've been thinking about this and I just don't understand how this is possible. And maybe the answer is they simply got so drunk that it became possible. But Angleton, who was friends with British spy Kim Philby, who we thought was our ally, but was a Russian mole, they would drink and Angleton would give the precise coordinates. Like, not say, oh, we got this plan. Yeah, it's really cool. We're going to be dropping people in Albania. But like the longitude and latitude.
Why? Each
time. Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe this goes deeper. Maybe there was maybe Angleton was also working for them.
Double spy.
Not a double agent. That's what Kim Philby is. He is a double agent. That would be two double agents. I'm specifying that because a triple agent does exist and that's something else. So we can't get confused. Anyway, for some bizarre reason, he was telling Kim Philby where they would drop, and Philby was relaying all of this to the Soviets. Roughly 200 foreign agents were murdered this way.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if murdered is the right word. I mean, I guess they were...
Yeah, murdered.
Yeah,
That's
but it's
what murdering is.
Yeah, but we don't say that soldiers murder other soldiers. They kill other soldiers. And this was a war espionage. So I think we can say killed. If the Soviets were doing it to us, if they were dropping spies in, we would probably shoot them, and we wouldn't say murdered. It's fair game, strict but fair. They killed them. It's our bad. It's our bad. It's not the Soviets' bad. You're dropping spies in. We're gonna kill you, right? Especially during the Cold War. So that's our bad for giving Kim Philby the coordinates. If you're wondering what happened to Kim Philby, that's a story for another day, but eventually he got away with it. He safely got to Russia and lived in Russia.
Wow.
And was treated, as a hero. And he is going to come up in the future in another amazing story that we're going to tell. Now, you know what they did to Angleton? They promoted him to Chief of Counterintelligence.
Wow.
Let that sink in. Chief of Counterintelligence. Now, I mean, they didn't figure out it was Kim Philby for a while, so I guess they just looked at this drunk, maze-like man and said, yeah, he should pass judgment on everything. He became an incredibly powerful man and continued to drink. And remember, I'm drawing attention to the drinking, which means he was a fish. He came to believe that a master plot controlled everything and that he alone understood it. The man who was just the biggest intelligence leak thought that he had a special understanding of the Russians. In 1950, Weiner ordered a new assault, talking to a Yale man in Munich named Bill Coffin. These names are ridiculous, by the way.
Yeah, what?
Yeah, it's like a movie. I mean, it's like Bill Coffin, the most ominous, oh my God, this is going to fail. There's a mole in Austin Powers and he has a giant mole. Mm-hmm. This is literally like, who should we trust? Oh, Bill Coffin. Yeah. Tomb McCemetery. Nobody's going to die on this mission.
I went to school with somebody with the last name Coffin.
It's cool. I mean, if you're in a goth band, but it is ominous. Here's a quote from Coffin. Coffin was You're Coffin. Coffin was a man from World War II who was haunted by what happened in World War II. And he was once quoted as saying, "The ends don't justify the means, but they are the only thing that can." In World War II, communists were used to fight fascists. And in the Cold War, fascists were used to fight communists. Around this time, the head of the CIA, Dulles, was quoted, very unfortunately, as saying, "You can't run railroads without employing a few Nazis." Rough quote.
Oh, that did not age well.
That shouldn't, forget age. You don't say that in 1945. That is not a good thing to say. It's so honest, though. Around this time, they decided, we need to do something in East Germany. This isn't working. So they dropped pamphlets.
Oh my God.
The pamphlet thing, is there ever a good use of pamphlets? it always comes across so condescending where it's like, we're going to bomb you, or it's like, you need to stop obeying Stalin. Capitalism is better than nobody reads a pamphlet. It's a fuck you moment.
Nobody's walking down the street and they see a pamphlet fall from the sky and they go, ooh,
no,
a pamphlet.
No, it's
what
enraging.
Does this say?
And people hate pamphlets all the time. When you're handed a pamphlet, it's annoying.
Yeah.
You're just looking for a garbage. When it's falling out of the sky from the Americans, also annoying.
Yeah. It is condescending.
CIA, after they dropped all the pamphlets, they thought, okay, we've laid a good groundwork for people to be on our side, so let's airdrop some agents in to Eastern Germany. They were killed immediately.
Oh my God.
So many agents were killed.
Okay, so far I'm feeling like the CIA stinks.
Well,
they're not very good at what they're supposed to be doing.
The book isn't called Legacy of Winning. It's called Legacy of Ashes. Coffin, by the way, became so emotionally destroyed by this that he became a reverend. This is what the CIA does to you. You either turn to booze or God. He became a reverend, and then he was a big anti-war man in the 1960s. Now.
Good for him.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, win Coffin. Despite the CIA essentially parachuting in hundreds of human pinatas to be killed, no accounts of this were officially made, and there was no penalties given out. Nobody got in trouble. You would think that you would be fired or... No, these people were expendable.
Wow.
Yeah, and it is really sad. I mean, a lot of these people, well, some of them were Nazi sympathizers, but some of them were just regular people that needed a job, and the CIA said, this will work, and then they were killed. These aren't like spies all the time. They're not men that have been like trained and have a hardened psychopathic spirit, a samurai code. They're just like, okay, I'll do that job. And then imagine you're just parachuting down and you see a circle of men with guns waiting for you. You literally touch down and are shot.
Oh my God.
It's just insane. But things are about to get much worse.
Yay!
A plane flying over Alaska detects radioactivity coming from Russia. What do you think that means?
Monsters.
Monsters, yeah. It's far worse than that. Obviously, people suspected that the Soviets may have nuclear weapons.
And they do.
And we're testing them. Well, the president asked the CIA, based on what the CIA knew, how far away were the Soviets from having nukes? And the CIA declared they were at least 4 years away from being nuclear. 3 days later, Truman was forced to tell the world that Stalin had the bomb. The agency had failed on every level.
Wow.
They had nothing.
Nerds.
And at that time, resorted to guesstimates. This was a popular phrase around that time. And it is never good when your intelligence agency is using the word guesstimate.
Why did you sound like Trump when you said that?
What did I say?
And it's never good.
They say it's good. They're using guesstimates. It's a bake sale term. You can use it if you're the head of student council. I don't want to hear, excuse me. You don't want to hear intelligence officers doing that. You really don't. 1950. It gets even worse because the Korean War begins. A surprise attack that looks like the start of World War III. The Korean War was the first main test for the CIA. Now,
and the birth of North Korea.
Yep.
Ugh.
We're not there yet. Just relax.
I'm going to cover North Korea on another episode.
Relax.
Because it's fucking crazy.
Enjoy the final days of that not happening. We need a new guy. We need a new guy in charge of the CIA. We've had a lot of failure, a lot of guesstimates, and it's time to install General Walter Beetle Smith. Nobody has a normal name.
Beetle?
Beetle Smith. And I just got to say, I like Beetle. I'm a fan of Beetle. He's not any more effective than the people that came before. But to me, for my money, he's the most likable of any of these guys in the early days of the CIA. Unfortunately, around that time, he had an ulcer that was almost killing him. He was in, what's
An
that?
ulcer?
Yeah, 2/3 of his stomach.
Have you ever had a stomach ulcer?
No.
They are horrible.
Really?
It's literally a hole burning through your stomach.
He became the 4th director of the CIA in 4 years. They asked him, how do we find out what the Russians are doing? And he was quoted as saying, there's 2 people that can find out what the Russians want. One is God, and the other is Stalin. Beetle Smith was a sarcastic perfectionist with a tiny stomach. All right, so if you stick to your diet and you eat a high-protein, low-carb diet, maybe have a little more energy to focus on intelligence. You think you can do that? I think that's why I like him. Doctor Now approved, sarcastic like me, a perfectionist.
So for you to like someone, they have to have half a stomach?
I've struggled with OCD. Yeah, I think that he would eat crackers and mush. And there's something incredibly human about that. He gets given this horrible job. It's an absolute shit show. And he can't even drink or eat anything. He's eating baby food with a spoon, and they're coming in to be like, we lost another 5,000 men and we know nothing. You go, oh, Beetle. He told Weiner to step the fuck down too. You know Weiner?
Because he's a wise ass.
The guy that's just like, tanks, artillery, I deserve to die in World War II. He's like, chill. And he overhauled the whole agency. The president at this point asked, would China enter the war?
China.
What do they know? What do they want to do? Mao is now in power.
Chairman Mao makes me raise my eyebrow.
And now we're going to introduce a lovely fellow named Kim Il-sung. He's loved by the Soviets. Big baddie.
Yeah, of course he is.
Big baddie number 1. And at least we know what's going on with them, right? At least we have some sort of intelligence on what's going on between the Soviets and North Korea. Right as he took power, our information that was coming over the radio went silent thanks to a Soviet spy named William Wolf Wiseman.
Another wise guy?
Wolf Wiseman. I mean, yeah, the name's amazing. He was a linguist of Moscow, and he basically just entered the building where we were doing it under some sort of false pretenses and completely broke our code breakers. And ever since then, literally ever since then, we have had no idea what is going on in North Korea. We did. And then they turned it off because of that spy. And that has been considered by many people to be the biggest loss of intelligence in U.S. history.
I just want to briefly talk about North Korea because I feel like I didn't have a full understanding of North Korea until I watched a few documentaries on it. And like the fact that it is just like this massive blind spot on Earth is so disturbing, like way more than Russia or anywhere else.
It's nightmarish. It's the type of nightmare where we don't even know how much of a nightmare it is.
Yeah.
It's truly like a chaos realm, a hell realm, where people are suffering. We know they're suffering, but we don't even know how bad it is.
Yeah. Well, we know from people who have escaped North Korea. Like I'll cover a specific story when I do my episode. But I would imagine that like the horror stories that have come out of defectors from North Korea, it probably doesn't even touch the surface of the horrible things that go on, like making people climb up mountains and then throwing boulders at them until they crush and exiling them like
logs, not boulders. Well, there might be some boulders, but
yeah, horrible. Exiling people to mountain tops.
That's honestly one of the best things that can happen to you. Banishing you into the mountains, it can be a lot. You can be eaten by rats, slowly beaten to death, cut in half by a tree trunk. Yeah.
Public hangings, show executions in front of children at elementary schools.
Yeah, shooting people with anti-aircraft guns.
Like this is stuff happening in 2024.
Yep, and it could be argued that if we had not lost that intelligence, we would have been able to change the events.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually devastating.
Yeah, these are the kind of things where it's hard to wrap your head around it. When you learn about a serial killer, a tragedy of 3 children being killed, you go, wow. But this loss, intelligence losses are in a way so much worse.
Yeah.
And that one man, that one spy, where most people don't even know his name, the stakes are incredibly high.
The worst family on planet Earth right now.
The Sungs?
Yes.
Kim Il-sung.
Was his grandfather.
Yeah.
Was Kim Jong-un's grandfather. And they're listening to this podcast right now. If you don't hear from Alex and I in the coming weeks.
We're playing the tree game. So, unfortunately, the CIA is 0 for 3 with the most important events here. They were wrong about the Soviet nuclear program, they were wrong about the Korean War, and they were wrong about invasion plans. January 1951, Beadle hired Dulles. He was forced to bring Dulles back in. And this was a very bad match. You had Weiner, who was very hard at work with no real strategy. He was hiring college kids and sending them overseas to spy, and it didn't really work. I mean, have you ever tried to put an intern to work on something simple like graphic design? You know, like college kids trying to get them to complete basic tasks. Imagine sending them overseas and going, bring down the Iron Curtain. Right?
Yeah, no. I feel like teenagers were a lot more competent back then. We gave a lot more responsibility to like an 18-year-old back in the 40s and 50s than we do today.
You may be right about that. Yeah, I'll give you that one. I think that they had to grow up a little faster.
Yeah.
So yeah, they continued to try to build an intel machine with zero effectiveness. Beadle Smith ate his crackers and mush and despaired. His second in command, Bill Jackson, quit because of how bad it was.
The most regular name in this story.
Yeah, I almost didn't want to include that name, but it is important that his second in command just went, you know what, this is so bad, I just quit. Because he quit, Beadle was forced to promote Dulles and Weiner. The bombastic, not effective leaders of the CIA were now promoted. Beadle Smith then had a complete meltdown. He asked Dulles and Weiner to tell him how much money they needed. And they said, to achieve the CIA's goals. Why don't you guess?
$1 billion.
Well, you know what? In today's money, honestly, it was $587 million.
Yeah, it'd probably be
yeah.
about 1 billion.
Yeah, that is over $1 billion. And more than 400 of that was to Weiner. Beadle was furious and also started to feel that the other men were hiding something from him. He got vague responses about things, and he told them, hey, don't do that. Don't hide stuff from me. Obviously, Korea was a major problem, and the CIA needed to do something. Now, what have they done so far?
Nothing.
Now, at this point, we decided we got to penetrate Mao. I didn't say that very well. We got to.
Yeah, you do.
we need to figure out what's going on with Mao and Kim Il-sung. We need a guy. We need a guy with a normal name. Introduce Donald Gregg. Good, right? Mm? When told that he would be in charge of the Korean operations, he responded with, "Where is Korea?"
Oh my God.
Yeah. And he decided to turn farmers into spies.
Oh no.
Parachute in Korean farmers.
What?
Hey, we've got a great track record of parachute missions here at the CIA. We'll train you for a week to become spies, and we'll drop you into Korea, and then you'll spy.
Become a farmer?
I just think I don't know if they really had much plan for what to do when the people actually landed there. I mean, it hadn't worked yet because everyone was getting shot immediately. So maybe they were just like, we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
So they're dropping South Korean farmers into North Korea?
Yeah, they all died.
Of course.
We dropped them.
They gotta stop this. They gotta cut this out. This is enough.
I understand it though, because you know when you keep failing at something and you're just like, I've done this. I've done prank call streams.
Not with people's lives.
But it's the same thing. I go, I need, just move on to the next number. And I go, I got to get through to CVS. And that's my parachute mission, is talking to the pharmacy at CVS for a prank call. But yeah.
Nobody's losing their life at CVS.
But that's why it's going to feel so sweet when our parachute mission
but
finally
now
works.
all the other countries are going, oh, here's America parachuting people in again.
I would have said tunnels. Do the opposite. Let's get underground. But
everyone, you look up in the sky, there's people falling.
it is true. It is very obvious. Oh, there they go again. Oh, it's so early.
Why didn't they just walk? Why didn't they just send them over the border like an average civilian?
I think they wanted it
Literally
to be cooler than that.
Anything else.
Well,
boat them in. Drive them in.
They parachuted them into land, air, and sea, and they were all suicide missions. So when the farmers were all killed, Donald Gregg made 3 special operations teams: White Tiger, Yellow Dragon, and Blue Dragon. Not necessarily thinking like what would be a more effective plan, but what are cooler names? They were all killed. Excuse me. Some of them actually did survive and were tortured and then were murdered. So, in 1952...
Are they ever going to get a win?
In 1952, the CIA introduced Parachute Plus.
You're joking.
No, I'm joking. In 1952, we dropped Korean agents into the north. Deeper behind. It actually, you know what? I forgot what that is. It wasn't called Parachute Plus, but we did do more.
They parachuted more people?
More parachuting. Yes. Yeah.
Holy.
You should have done the parachute story. Remember you were going to do the parachute true crime story? And I was like, I don't know, maybe do it on the next one to fit it in. We didn't know how perfect that would be.
Well, I'll kick off the next episode with a true crime parachuting story.
Yeah. It's a good one.
It'll fit right into this.
Okay, so we drop more people deeper. It's like, maybe it'll work if we just send them deeper north. Mm-hmm. And it worked.
You're joking.
It worked. Reports actually started coming back. Every single person that was dropped was sending in information, and it was citing each unit's strengths and weaknesses. So they were giving a total overview of all the military in that area, which was extremely valuable to Americans. Every report was bullshit. They had been captured and were sending back fake reports.
No.
yes. So it's getting worse. They're not, I guess.
So they're lying?
I guess no, they're not lying. They'd been captured. They'd all been captured.
Oh, but they hadn't killed them.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it's very unlike North Korea to not. They monitor everything.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the Eastern powers eventually just got sick of shooting parachute spies over and over, and eventually we're like, let's do something with these people. Let's capture them, bribe them, and use them to send fake information back. The CIA eventually concluded that almost all the intel was manufactured. It had been passed on to the Pentagon and White House and was a complete disaster.
Wow.
Because of all of this, Donald Gregg was promoted to station chief at Seoul.
What is wrong with these people?
This is all fact. Everything I've said is fact.
Incredibly incompetent. Like, this is common sense.
Well, I think it's because they're...
He said at the beginning, to be in the CIA means it's just common sense.
That's why I read that quote.
They all lack common sense.
There's no common sense. They're drunk as fuck. And they're all failing so dramatically that their failures don't look like failures. They go like, oh, how many parachute guys did you lose? 200? Oh, yeah, and that's about the same. So it doesn't mean anything.
Wow.
He was promoted to station chief at Seoul and then promoted to U.S. embassy head to Korea, and then later promoted to be the national security aide to George W. Bush.
Oh, my. And these are the people that run your country.
Beadle Smith,
not our country.
Beadle Smith sent a messenger deputy director of intelligence, Loftus Becker. He sent him to inspect all the Asian stations in 1952. And Loftus concluded that the entire network was a failure.
Yeah, no shit.
And on that note, the longest running failure for American intelligence has been our inability to penetrate North Korea. It is considered their biggest failure.
It's the world's biggest failure. Every country should want to take down North Korea. Obviously, Russia doesn't want to.
Now, around this time, they had a bit of a personnel shortage. They were having a hiring crisis. And that has actually continued throughout the CIA's life. Very hard to find the right people.
I wonder why.
So they would... Now, we're focusing on the early days here. I do believe there was a large increase after 9/11, but we'll have to get to that later.
Are we going to do an episode on 9/11?
So we're gonna be doing 2 episodes at a time of this series, which I've called The Terror of the CIA. And I think 2 parts at a time is good. So 1 part, some years, next part, some more years. Then we're going to go away, do some other stuff, do some true crime, do some other kinds of stories. Then we'll come back and do another 2 episodes. And I honestly don't know how many of those 2 episode chunks it's going to take us to get to now. I mean, Legacy of Ashes came out in 2007. So
a lot has happened in the CIA.
Yeah, there's a lot more potential parachute missions that have happened since then. But yeah, I'm both loving this, and I'm this is why I said I was terrified, because these people are in charge of keeping us safe. And they've got all the nukes.
Wow.
And they are in many ways hopelessly incompetent. I mean, Wisner's son went on to be a big politician. Their sons always become...
Yeah, it runs in the family.
They keep getting promoted, and their sons keep taking over from them, and that's who we've got. That is who...
Just a bunch of drunk frat boys parachuting civilians into enemy territories.
So, the CIA started asking people a question. It's a little tricky, right, to ask people if they want to be a spy. You got to go to the college job fair. You can't just say, do you want to be a spy? You have to kind of court them. And they would say, how would you like to work for the government in a really interesting way? The Korean War would end up being known as the Forgotten War. And as Tim Weiner writes for the CIA, it was an intentional amnesia. They then turned their focuses to Europe. A 3-star general was dispatched to take over CIA operations in Germany. You ready for this name? Lucian Truscott.
Wow.
Yes. A truly majestic name. He was sent there to just kind of see what was going on. There's a lot of this in the CIA, kind of bouncing around. Let's move over here. Okay, complete failure, many lost lives. Okay, let's go back over here. What he discovered is that while all this Korean malarkey had been happening, secret dark site prisons had been created in Japan, Germany, and the worst one in the Panama Canal. These were anything-go areas similar to the Guantanamo.
I was going to say, like black site.
Of the future, yes. They did borderline torture stuff, and they did stuff that is almost more horrifying than torture, drug-induced mind control. They started really focusing on how do we control people's minds? How can we completely control people? And that project was called Project Artichoke.
So creative with the names.
Project Artichoke, yeah. That went on to be a larger project, which you've probably heard, called Ultra.
That's what I was going to say. This sounds like MK Ultra.
Prison inmates were kept high on LSD for 77 days. Some of the best music was created out of that program. Army civilian employee Frank Olson was given some acid and leapt to his death from the window of his New York hotel. Essentially, the drive to penetrate the Iron Curtain had forced Americans to adopt the same techniques as their most hated enemies. You know, we have become what we feared.
I watched a documentary on black sites. I had to turn it off. It actually scarred me. I was like, this is fucked up.
Well, it also is eerily like what we described in North Korea, right? with these areas that you
Yeah.
go and you just kind of live in hell.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes they do it to terrorists, but sometimes they do it to innocent cab drivers.
Taxi to the Dark Side.
Yeah.
That's a documentary on black sites, if you guys want to watch that. Really fucked up. But yeah, I guess North Korea is like one gigantic black site.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So, let's head over to Germany. What's going on in Germany? Well, the Hitler Youth have grown up.
Yay!
And
Womp womp.
we essentially we tried to win them over to our side, and it didn't work. The mature Hitler Youth took the CIA weapons, radios, and money and buried it all over the country, preparing to rise up and assassinate the right people when the time came. On March 5th, 1953, a body lays in a room. They're afraid to touch it. This man is one of the most... Aliens?
Yeah.
Yes. Aliens have landed in Russia. No, Stalin has died.
Oh.
Stalin has died. Do you know what happened when Joseph Stalin died?
No.
So everyone was so paralyzed by obedience that, I mean, this is a place where the first person to stop clapping would be sent to the gulag. So nobody wanted to admit he was dead. Nobody wanted to touch his body. Nobody wanted to do anything. They just kind of left him on the ground being like, what do we do? It's Stalin. Nobody wants to be the guy that goes in and goes, hey, Stalin's dead.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Almost like he's going to open his eyes and be like, that was a test.
Yeah.
The person who eventually went in was a cleaning lady who said like, okay, let's get on with it. He's dead. I got to clean up. His death intensified.
Savage.
His death intensified fears. Under Eisenhower, the agency spread out farther and attempted to remake the map of the world. Dulles was a charmer. And even though he was failing terribly, there was no social media. There was no, Substack articles about this guy. There was the mainstream media, and he charmed everyone. He would yank foreign correspondents who were against him. He would rewrite stories in the press, plant stories. He was a rampant alcoholic at this point, and he was dealing with mass resignations. Everyone was quitting the CIA.
Wow, I wonder why.
And there were some legitimate tricky situations. A CIA officer had killed a British colleague and was being charged in the UK. A station chief in Switzerland had committed suicide. And there was a major lack of talent in other countries. It's just very hard to get the right people. At this point, President Eisenhower had a realization. I'm not going to say the whole thing again. The CIA didn't have it. It was fucked. The CIA was fucked. But wait. Just when you thought the CIA couldn't do anything right, they did something undeniably epic. Now, you were asking, does the CIA ever do anything right? Well, in 1953, the CIA stole a Soviet Yak-23 jet fighter. Basically, the Soviets, David Arlington writes in his book, Area 51, the Dreamland Chronicles, the CIA realized that the Soviets had a new cutting-edge fighter jet, the Yak-23. The plane was being transported by train, disassembled in crates, and taken through Soviet satellite countries. An arrangement was made with people that were loyal to the CIA for the crates to be officially parked somewhere for an extended period of time in Yugoslavia. We sent in our agents, and they brought the crates onto a U.S. transport plane and flew them back to the U.S. So at this point, the Russians have no idea. They think that these crates containing the Yak-23 are still safe in Yugoslavia, but they've been taken all the way back to America. The crates were opened, the plane was meticulously assembled, and then disguised with U.S. Air Force deckling, so it could be plausibly passed off as an experimental prototype if it were seen.
Hell yeah.
Let's go. Yeah, put some respect on the name. A U.S. Air Force pilot then spent 2 to 3 weeks, taking the plane through its paces, with other aircraft pacing and otherwise helping evaluate what the yak could and could not do. Once they had all the data they wanted, the plane was stripped of the fake markings, disassembled, cleaned, and put back into its shipping crates just as meticulously as it had been removed. The crates were flown back to Eastern Europe and inserted right into the freight yard where they'd been stored, with no one outside of the Yugoslavians who were aiding the operation knowing that they had been gone.
Whoa, that's pretty epic.
Incredible.
But why give it back?
Because if they know that we know that information, they're going to scrap that jet and they're going to create something new. We don't want them to know we know.
Oh.
This is a big part of counterintelligence.
Damn, how did they not notice that it had gone missing?
Because it had been arranged that it would sit there for a period of time. Maybe the factory wasn't ready. Maybe the pilots weren't ready. Maybe they were allocating funds. But for whatever reason, it was being stored there.
Wow.
Around this time, also, win number 2, the Lockheed Corporation began work on a top secret spy plane. It was thought that an aircraft that could fly at 70,000 feet would be beyond the reach of Soviet fighters, missiles, and radar. Nicknamed the Dragon Lady, this prototype would eventually turn into the fabled Lockheed U-2, which we will return to in the future. Now, we're going to go to Iran. Tehran. British spies have been kicked out of the country. And America decides to move in and start converting the locals. Beadle Smith and Weiner, February 18th, 1953, speak to the British. And basically what you need to know is that there's a leader in Iran, and he's more loyal to the Soviets. And there's a Shah who is more loyal to Western powers. Why is this important? Because Iran has tons of oil. And in this war, the person who has more oil has a big advantage. And we didn't want there to be a leader in Iran that would not facilitate us getting the oil. We decided that this was the big one. This was the big leader, election, ruler situation that we've been training for. The British and the Americans working together to get Mossadegh out and elect our guy. The plan was named Operation Boot, as in, we're giving him the boot. But Americans thought that was a little too silly. The Americans really like making things grand and overstated sometimes in the CIA. And they wanted to name it Operation Ajax, after a hero from the Trojan War. Now, Ajax was an odd choice. First of all, harkens back to that suicide poem, but also the man Ajax went mad slaying sheep, thinking that the sheep were warriors. And after killing a bunch of sheep, he came to and killed himself in shame, which I think is actually very pro-animal. I'm surprised that somebody years ago would feel that bad about slaughtering sheep. He could have just been like, I guess we're eating sheep. But he felt bad about it. So.
You know, just an average Tuesday when you go mad and slaughter all the sheep.
So they decided to focus on bribery and subversion. They basically rented people that could break up rallies, thugs, and just kept tunneling money to the right people in Iran. We did not want the oil to be in Moscow's hands. Eisenhower, around this time, suggested to make peace. He said, maybe this isn't working, what we're doing. Maybe we should just try to actually have peace. But the CIA wanted no part of that. And the British didn't either. Mossadegh made a horrible decision. He felt that if he kicked out the British and told the Americans that he was anti-Soviet, that the Soviets were coming, he would be rescued by the Americans. But the CIA just looked at that and probably thought, this just makes him an even easier target. On March 18th, 1953, Weiner informed them that they had the go-ahead from Dulles. On April 4th, $1 million were sent to Tehran Station. The president made a speech calling for peace, saying, any nation's right to form a government and an economic system of its own choosing is inalienable. And any nation's attempt to dictate to other nations their form of government is indefensible. These ideas struck home with Roger Goyrand, the station chief in Tehran. He thought about the implications of changing the whole system in Iran. He said that it would spell long-term disaster in the region. Dulles recalled him to Washington and dismissed him as station chief. On June 15th, the Americans and British said yes to the plan. On June 23rd, Winston Churchill had a stroke and almost died, and it was kept so secret that America didn't even know about it. On July 11th, Eisenhower gave the green light, and the CIA moved in. To find out what happened during one of the CIA's most famous ventures, join us next week for The Terror of the CIA Part 2. In typical espionage fashion, we are going to debrief from this.
Okay.
And talk about it. I wanted to start with a reframing of sorts, because the CIA has been a bit of a punching bag here.
You don't say.
In Legacy of Ashes, Tim Weiner focuses on one aspect of the CIA, which is the covert operations. And he's been criticized a bit for this because the CIA does other things too, in terms of gathering intelligence, moving people around. These big, flowery, violent attempts at changing the world often fail because they're big swings, and they're fun to focus on, and they definitely paint the CIA in a bad light. But there's a lot of other stuff that they do. And when the CIA fails, part of the failure is that it comes to light, because the CIA is supposed to operate in secrecy. Mm-hmm. So when they succeed, they often try to hide those successes. It's not necessarily in the best interests of our enemies to know our biggest wins.
Right.
And really, the more they underestimate us and see us as incompetent, the better. So ultimately, this is a kaleidoscopic world. There's different entry points, and we're going to explore different stories and different entry points throughout this series. I'm actually going to be pivoting, and I'm going to use different sources every 2 episodes so that we can see different historians' takes on this, and even get some stories from people that worked in the agency, and try to get the most complete picture so we can make up our own mind. It's also very hard to decide win or a loss sometimes. Now, obviously, the parachute massacres, definitive L's. But let me give you another example here. Let's fast forward to September 1960. And this actually comes from somebody named J.B. Dyer on Ask Historians. So, Congo, in September 1960, the station chief, Larry Devlin, received a message that someone named Joe from Paris would arrive on a very important mission. The Joe was chemist Sidney Gottlieb, more famously known as the mastermind of MK Ultra. He came a week later with a special poison meant to produce a disease local to Congo. The poison was designated for a recently elected and perceived Soviet-leaning Patrice Lumumba, suggesting it should be put in his food or toothpaste. Devlin asked who would authorize the operation. Joe claimed it was President Eisenhower. Eisenhower had indeed said something to CIA Director Dulles about getting rid of Lumumba, but whether this meant literal assassination is up for debate. The important thing is it got interpreted that way. The chief stalled for months and eventually nixed the plan, and the assassination didn't go forward. Not long after, in 1961, Lumumba was shot to death by a group supported by the Belgians. So he was killed anyway. This was led by a Belgian mercenary. So does that mean that the Belgians were more competent than the US? Keep in mind that the US helped opposition groups, including the eventual execution squad, financially and with intelligence, and clearly were not sad to see Lumumba go. This story could be, and has been, painted in myriad ways, but the death by toothpaste has often been zoomed in on for the comedic element, with success simply meaning the murder being finished. The US could be painted as both incompetent, with the aborted plan and waffling, and competent, paying the right groups for the deed to eventually be done. And then there's the morality metric, supposing we essentially do the opposite and judge every assassination as a negative strike against an intelligence agency. By what value do we quantify Devlin's refusal to go along with the original plot as a win? And what about the fact, in between the toothpaste incident and the final firing squad, Lumumba later ordered a military action where civilians were massacred? The UN Secretary General called it incipient genocide. There isn't an easy way to score all the events above, and it's easy to tell the story without falsehood that nonetheless slants a particular narrative either way. Additionally, keep in mind many things are still classified in all agencies, and not every country has a Freedom of Information Act, nor necessarily a flurry of governmental investigations in the 1970s that brought some of the dirtier tricks to light. So just trying to line up historical deeds isn't an apples-to-apples comparison. It's safe to say the US is stronger in some ways and the Soviets stronger in others. And even that requires some judgment in terms of quality, since the US had a much more open society that was easier to infiltrate to begin with. So it's complicated. How did you feel about the story?
It could be my illness. I feel like I'm on an acid trip.
Yeah. You see why these people go insane, right? They do this 9 to 5, probably more than 9 to 5.
And then they're drunk half the time, so...
Yeah, and you can't trust anybody. You don't know if the guy you're drinking with is your friend or the guy that's going to leak your information and, you know, that's going to lead to untold deaths.
Doesn't sound like a job I would want to do. You can't, like we learned in the last episode, holding secrets just makes you more damaged.
Absolutely.
And that's all these people do.
They are professional secret holders.
Yeah.
When they recruit people to intelligence agencies nowadays, people are often surprised at the metric that they use and how they do it, because you think they're going to be focused on, okay, what kind of grades did I get? How strong I am? And one of the main things they focus on is there anything somebody can use against you? Mm-hmm. Have you been cheating on your wife? Do you have gambling debt? Because that's the main thing. Is there something that somebody can twist to get information out of you? The most important thing they can do is just to not, I mean, it must be hard sometimes. There's many people have gotten in trouble for leaving the agency and then writing books. I don't know if you know this, but one of the SEALs who, I think the SEAL who killed Osama bin Laden.
SEAL? Heidi Klum's husband? SEAL?
Yeah, SEAL killed Osama bin Laden. He wrote a book about it, and it was obviously very popular. The publishers were like, let's get this out. Everyone's talking about this. And he lost all the money. All the money from his... I mean, he made millions of dollars, and it all went to the government because they don't want you talking about this stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. For a while, I wanted to join CSIS. I was seriously considering it.
You?
Yeah.
In CSIS?
As you can see, I have a fascination with intelligence. I love John le Carre, and I wanted to be an intelligence officer.
You thought that you were in the X-Men at one point.
Yeah, I got the crazy out of the way, though. That's the thing. I already went crazy, so when I become a spy, I'm level. I'm good.
Right. They're not going to take any of that into consideration. Make sure to add to your resume that you can make bananas disappear.
That you always got to mention, I didn't stick a banana up my ass. Whenever you say Alex went crazy, and no, I just had this idea that if I was throwing bananas at the bushes, banana peels, I ate the banana, and then I threw, and I was hallucinating. I thought I could make bananas re-enter nature if I threw them at a tree hard enough. But is that any stupider than the parachute plans? All right. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed this deep dive. We're going to dive deeper next week. And beyond that, we've got a lot of other amazing stories from different areas coming. If you want more from the Bonus Features podcast, meaning the bonus episode, we do one bonus episode every week, please go to patreon.com.
Yep. It's Christie's Movie Club.
Yes.
Patreon, tier 2. You have to be tier 2. Tier 1 only gets the watch parties and the watch list. So
yeah,
that's an important thing to note. yeah, so far the bonus. Oh, speaking of the bonus episode. Okay, so the bonus episode has been very fun. We've been talking mostly about things that we've been watching. Also, what we're going to start doing is we would like to feature a listener tale on every bonus episode. So if you have an interesting story of your own, whether it's a hometown true crime or some intelligence thing in your family or a ghost story, literally anything that's interesting, please write into bonusfeatures.contact@gmail.com. We will be picking one to feature not this week, but the week after.
All right, guys. And that's going to do it. I know you love Christie and you want to hear her talk more. She was sick, so I tried to carry as much as I could, but I think she had some...
My brain is pudding.
She had some good riffs, and hopefully she'll be completely back to her full health next week. Thanks so much for listening, guys, and please leave a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts when this is finally on Apple Podcasts. If you like this show, a 5-star review goes a long way. Okay, have a great week.
Bye.